Uber Eats is really giving a lot of these companies a big run for their money.
You would think that if you were these ultra large restaurant chain CEOs, that you would want to try and own the distribution in this thing called delivery.
The idea would be to create that endless selection of restaurant and bars and whatever food and beverages, right? That's the ultimate goal. So if they're going to join force, if they can achieve that in a way that win over customers' mindset, that, hey, that's the go-to place. It has everything. And it's fast, gets me to me fast, right? And predictably. And I can see it on a map, just like the Uber cars. That's what they need to get to.
Let's play this out. You know these founders, the guys running these companies. Do you think that one of the large 1 or 2 players would gobble up a Grubhub? I'm very excited that for the first time, we have our first guest appearance from my colleague, Tri Tran. Tri is joining us from San Francisco. Hello, Tri.
Hey, pleasure to be here.
We're going to talk about Grubhub. And Tri has a good amount of familiarity with the topic because Tri founded or co-founded and was formerly CEO of a company that many of you probably know of called Munchery, raising over $100 million for that business. And why don't you describe what Munchery's business model was, Tri?
Yeah, Munchery started out as a platform connecting chefs and cooks who would cook home-style meals and connecting them with consumers who are looking for that kind of food. And we deliver them as well.
You're definitely familiar with the food space. Food industry is a tough industry.
It is.
Yeah, and the other thing that's really tough about the food industry is you don't get to take off any holidays because those are your busiest times of year, right? So, I mean, you can't go and take regular vacation cycles in that space. Not even to mention the ultra low margins, the lossage because it's a perishable good and all those other fun aspects of the business.
Right.
But we have some activity now where this article from the Wall Street Journal today says that Grubhub is considering strategic options, including the possible sale of the business. And this comes a few months after, in end of October, this must be their last quarterly call. Yeah, their last quarterly earnings call. We covered this on the show, how the CEO, I think Matt Maloney?
Matt Maloney.
Said, hey, basically, starting in, I think, their August 2019 cohort analysis, their new and existing customers, they could see their user behavior changing because basically he was blaming Uber Eats and DoorDash and Caviar and Postmates and all the competition for flooding the market with all these, basically just lighting money on fire, putting all these promos in. They were seeing what used to be a strong customer loyalty, strong kind of recurring customer usage. They saw that starting to deteriorate, and that was very concerning for them. So they said, we basically need to have a wholesale change to our strategy, and we need to aggressively compete on similar terms with Uber Eats and all these other large players, namely to go after non-partner restaurants and have non-partner supply, which is basically much more expensive for Grubhub to support that. But they had to do it because they needed to provide the optionality and the offerings that their customers wanted, so they would stay loyal to Grubhub and not go to other platforms, which had maybe a wider array of supply. There's other things that he talked about as the reason why they had to do it, but basically they were saying we need to go spend a lot of money rolling out this new model, new salespeople, discounts and promos. We're also going to make a lot less money, or maybe break even, maybe lose some money having to work with non-partner restaurants. Basically, it's going to break their business model, or certainly have a big change to their business model. And now not even 3 months later, this news has leaked that they've engaged with a banker or a financial advisor to review potential moves which could include a sale of the company. So what do you make of all of this, Tri?
Yeah, it's definitely an exciting time. I mean, you mentioned Uber Eats, right? Uber Eats is really giving a lot of these companies a big run for their money. Essentially, companies like Uber can, I think, as you have covered in the past, can leverage their existing driver workforce in multiple ways, right? So when not driving these drivers can deliver products and vice versa. And then on top of that, Uber has the investment capital and now being a public company, and thus they can invest and outlast a lot of these companies. Over the holiday breaks, I was in Vietnam, and there Uber has exited, but Grab is the number one player. And I can see Grab executing the exact same strategy, right? Most restaurant, tea shops, whatever I visited, were filled with Grab drivers waiting for the order to finish so that they can go and deliver to the customers. And over there, motorbikes makes it easy to go around, and labor is way less expensive. So yeah, it was a kind of like a deja vu that I was like, whoa, oh my goodness, that's exactly how this should be done. So yeah, it was that's my first reaction when I saw that. Grubhub started out as strictly just a digital platform that a restaurant can take orders digitally, versus a phone call and whatnot. And it was set up so that restaurant can fulfill such orders on their own, including delivery. Grubhub didn't have to touch the food products at all.
It's just a two-sided marketplace, just the customer and the restaurant.
Correct. But then they soon realized that was not enough, right? They would have to provide delivery service and workforce to compete with Uber Eats and DoorDash and Postmates. But yeah, I think that came a little too late. By now, or by the time that they roll out such a workforce, Uber Eats and DoorDash and the lights have already taken a strong foothold. So yeah, no, that's the history there. I mean, even DoorDash would have trouble competing with Uber Eats because they don't do people delivery, like the taxi like service that Uber is well known for. But at least they're competing for at least the number 2 spot. And thus they have successfully raised over 2 billion, I believe.
Yep, 2.1. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great going. So yeah, to me, it's the number 1 and number 2 that is really going to take place in the US here. You mentioned Postmates as well. They also raised a lot of money, not as much, 900 million or something like that. I think the issue with Postmates, and I've met Bashins and folks like that in the past too, is their lack of focus, at least originally, right? They started before DoorDash and Uber Eats, but they started out as a general purpose delivery platform. Deliver anything, furniture, whatever you needed to deliver. But of course, it ended up that food delivery is the highest frequency use. Duh. Highest consuming products. And so lack of that initial focus made it harder for them to change and adapt and become top of mind for food and beverage.
Well, you know what's interesting? Look, this is still on Crunchbase. This is their description. Postmates powers local on-demand logistics focused on fast deliveries from any type of merchant at scale.
Mm-hmm.
So they got to go update this Crunchbase description because it's exactly your point.
But it's just very low frequency for anything non-food and beverage related. I am dead sure about that.
Right. And especially what we saw with Grub, I mean, they're a profitable company, but what they really attribute that is they having a really strong lock-in with the supplier back to the consumer, and they're able to make money from the supplier that's also paying them because they see this as a valuable part of, increasing demand for the restaurant, partner restaurant business. So it's much more than just saying, I'm gonna just kind of like go in over the top and let you order products from any store, including restaurants. And what you find, I think, if you actually did I wonder if Grubhub is actually publishing this. I feel like Grubhub's prices are actually less. If you were to compare the same restaurant, and if that restaurant's a partner restaurant on Grubhub, to say it's on Postmates or it's on one of these other platforms, Uber Eats, I'm willing to bet that Grubhub, more often than not, is the cheaper solution than these other platforms that might have a wider array, but they net are actually more expensive, assuming they don't give you some crazy discount promo code or something like that. I've seen that anecdotally. I haven't seen any research to back that up, but I feel like it kind of speaks to the model that they were working on, which was profitable for them, but had restraints, which ultimately allowed them to get outpaced from a size and a scale standpoint. As you were saying, DoorDash last summer, this is pre-WeWork debacle, was valued at around $12 billion. So even if you give them a post-WeWork haircut in valuation, because they're certainly losing money, Grubhub today is valued at $5 billion. I don't think DoorDash has lost $7 billion in value just because of WeWork having a ridiculous target IPO price and trying to pull the wool over everyone's eyes. But certainly Grubhub is not in the top two. I don't know where Postmates, I don't know where probably maybe Postmates and Grubhub are kind of neck and neck. So let's play this out. You know these founders, the guys running these companies. Do you think that one of the large one or two players would gobble up a Grubhub? Or do you think that a kind of like Postmates Grubhub would do a merger rather than one of the big players buying the smaller player? What do you think? If some kind of action does happen, what do you think would make the most sense here?
I mean, I don't know if it makes sense for, let's say, a Grubhub to join force with a Postmates. I mean, like DoorDash acquired Caviar to basically enhance their restaurant offering, right? Caviar started out only delivering for fancy restaurants. And that's a great starting point, by the way. They should have expanded quickly and, deliver for everybody. But anyways, I don't know if it makes sense for Grubhub to join force with like a Postmate or something like that. I think a more strategic acquisition, like, I'm just making this up, right? What if an existing powerhouse like Walmart decide, hey, I want to get into this game. I want to own my own delivery platform. I don't want to rely on an existing ones. I don't want it to be just sitting duck if something goes wrong with that company, and I want to run my own thing. That may be a good thing to explore, right? Only time will tell. And if they get a company like Grubhub in desperations of an acquisition, they can get it for a good price. But yeah, no, I've met Bashan and talked to Matt in the past, and I know how hard it is for these guys to deal with being a third, or fourth spot on this winner take all kind of dynamic. It's really rough. So yeah, that's my guess, is probably more valuable that they become a strategic acquisition versus just number 3, number 4 joining together doesn't necessarily beat number 2. It's way harder.
I feel like what about, I could see a strategic acquisition from, this is really what a McDonald's, Burger King, fill in the blank, massive restaurant chain, conglomerate of multiple restaurant chains owning the platform that determines where you're going to order food, what restaurant you're going to order food from. You would think that if you were these ultra large restaurant chain CEOs, that you would want to try and own the distribution in this thing called delivery. We basically saw McDonald's build Uber Eats. I think McDonald's accounted for, at its peak, maybe around 10% of all the supply on Uber Eats. We covered on the show that Uber Eats' global expansion was entirely built on the back of McDonald's. And I think all McDonald's got out of that deal was preferential terms on pricing from Uber. They should have gotten equity in Uber for the amount of supply and value that they were helping that platform in solving that chicken and egg problem. So that was a massive blunder. But like a Walmart, obviously grocery is super big for Walmart Amazon now as well, Target as well. But you think one of these like big box retailers would be interested in getting to, I mean, it just seems like a very expensive proposition if now one of those folks needs to fund Grubhub's business model departure or fund basically these initiatives and probably put more fuel on the fire for Grubhub to move more aggressively. I guess, yeah, if there's some kind of strategic tie-up, but you think like something like that or like these restaurant chains, even though I guess they kind of have missed the boat on that in the past. Maybe they have a change of heart.
It would take a giant like a McDonald's, right? I think other restaurant chain, even if they have 100 stores, is not enough to be worthwhile for them to spend that much money to acquire something like this. So yeah, I feel like that's probably a better outcome. At least a better outcome that can be useful for that large chain or that large brand.
Because Grubhub did a roll up many years ago when they bought or they merged with Seamless Web.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think many people remember that. And then I think they sunset, they wound down the Seamless Web app. But you don't think it would be too accretive for some kind of merger, a DoorDash Grubhub tie-up, in the same way that why DoorDash did a caviar deal.
Just like how we think about this, right? I still feel for these guys to merge with competitors with themselves, the idea would be to create that endless selection of restaurant and bars and whatever food and beverages, right? That's the ultimate goal. So if they're going to join force, if they can achieve that in a way that win over customers' mindset, that, hey, that's the go-to place. It has everything. And it's fast, gets me to me fast, right? And predictably. And I can see it on a map, just like the Uber cars. That's what they need to get to. And that's a pretty tall mountain to climb with, regarding where DoorDash and Uber Eats are today. They're already basically hitting that. So to me, that's that kind of mindset win over is going to be a tough battle.
Yeah, what value does a DoorDash get from a Grubhub?
Yeah,
because they already have more supply.
They have basically the same supply, if not a lot more.
Right, they already have more supply. They might have probably do have a more fully baked delivery network. What about like a Lyft Grubhub?
Right. So if Lyft wanting to get into this game, they can try and fast track that with this food, because Lyft obviously doesn't do food delivery today. And if that's where they strategically decide to do that, okay, I can see how that can help them get a fast start.
Yeah, I see that. I see. I could see a Lyft Grubhub. I could see a consortium of restaurants, but that's probably has about a 0.0001% chance. And then it makes sense to me why if you're one of the bigger players, you're not really getting that much value out of it, because you probably have more supply. You might have a better delivery capability anyway, like a DoorDash. So man, I mean, I actually don't see that many options for who would see this as like a great strategic option to go buy Grubhub. And certainly this news does not help them. You think some disgruntled banker who didn't get to represent Grubhub leaked this? I mean, this seems like a really, really bad, despite their stock bouncing and going up based on the news, it just strategically, at least in terms of their competitors having this information,
right?
It just seems like a pretty big blunder.
Who knows? Your guess is as good as mine on how the news is leaked, but definitely signaling that they're conceding. They're saying, "Hey, I'm not making it in this game." The game is who can hold their breath the longest. So obviously, this clearly show that I'm running out of air.
Yeah, and I guess this also speaks to the challenge of them being a public company. and a smaller player in a winner-take-all market as a public company, as maybe the number 3/number 4 player, maybe they're tied for third player. And this article speaks to them being concerned about an activist investor coming in and causing trouble for them. And I don't know what the activist investor is going to bring to the table other than forcing a sale, but then you're back in the same boat. What are you going to do to force a sale that's really going to actually be accretive to the stock? I don't know. I'm struggling to see it. I like your analogy that this is basically just who can hold their breath the longest. This also speaks to our point about the power of platform conglomerates that we're seeing with Uber. I've been bullish on Uber for a long time. You can now see, as you're talking about, the synergies between the ride-sharing business flowing over into the food delivery business, food marketplace delivery business, and how those things, as you stack kind of one network on top of the other, you get these compounding network effects. It's a big deal. And when you can see a platform conglomerate coming into existence and creation, that's a very different beast than one big platform or the number 2 platform like a Lyft, for example, which doesn't have this ability to have multiple different networks playing off of each other. It just gives you a lot more optionality. I think it gives you, in general, a lot more strength. And I mean, we're seeing that with Uber Eats' success, even though it's still losing money, but they have a path to break even, according to Dara. And we're certainly seeing the pain here with Grub and other players. I think we also covered maybe a few weeks ago, Postmates. There's some leaked information about Postmates, thinking about even a direct listing of sorts or these kinds of things. So, yeah, it's a tough place to be.
It's a tough place to be. I wish them the best. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks so much, Tri. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Hi, this is Alex from Winner Take All. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the content. Feel free to leave a comment, ask us questions, and definitely make sure to join us on our next live stream.